What's going on, y'all? Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart. We're talking a little SEC football. And of course, yes, this is an Auburn channel, but we do talk about a lot of schools in the SEC and across the nation and breaking news that goes on in college football. So as anticipated, a lot of folks last night had their opinions about where this the final college football playoff ranking was going to go. And the optimists thought that there would be another team that would sneak in, considering that Notre Dame got beat down by Clemson the second time around. And there you have it, though. You got Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Ohio State. And there are some big problems, some fundamental problems with this. There are some teams that arguably could have taken that fourth spot in Ohio State's and Notre Dame's place for good reason. For number one, Ohio State did not play a full season like some of these other teams played. Notre Dame, let's just say if they would have kept the game a little bit more competitive or closer, then yeah, you got an argument to where, no, you shouldn't fall completely out of the college football playoff. But nonetheless, Notre Dame still allowed to sneak in. Now, here's the issue that I have with Notre Dame. Notre Dame, in all of their encounters here recently in either the BCS or the college football playoffs, they don't show up. They play really well for about a quarter and a half, and after that, they just get completely blown out. And even this season, you beat Clemson at a time where they don't have their starting quarterback. Now, you can't tell me that that's not a factor. Trevor Lawrence, arguably one of the best, if not the best, quarterback in college football, out for that game with the coronavirus. Something that is a factor, something that was a factor this year, something as to why the college football season was abbreviated to begin with. They beat Clemson during that time. They meet again in the ACC championship game and get completely blown out, get completely outclassed, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't look like a Final Four team. Now, I think it's the committee's responsibility to place the best four teams in the country, especially if these teams have merit throughout the season in the college football playoff. So if I'm thinking about one of the biggest losers of this college football playoff, I think they got robbed. I think they got gigged, as they say, down at Texas A&M. Texas A&M got completely robbed out of a chance to show how their momentum has shifted to where they could be a viable Final Four team this year. And it just goes to show the obvious bias of the big names, like your Notre Dames, like your Clemsons now, like your Ohio States. I think Texas A&M, the number 5 team in the country, they've kind of held steady at that point for the last few weeks. I think they should have gotten a shot, and I'm going to tell you why. Texas A&M has the quality wins. They beat Florida. They beat Auburn on the road. They go through the SEC schedule, maybe not winning against Vanderbilt early in the season the way people might have thought. Folks probably thought they should have beaten LSU a little bit worse than they did, only beating them 20-7. Playing Alabama pretty decently for the first portion of the football game. Alabama blowing everybody out. But then you have Alabama that shows up to the SEC championship game against Florida, and Florida was super resilient in that game. Florida showed that, hey, over months of film study, we have a way that we could neutralize this defense, and they did. But the idea of Texas A&M sitting outside, having to play in a New Year's Six bowl instead of being in the college football playoff shows a lot of flaws in this system. Texas A&M is great on both sides of the line of scrimmage, offense and defense. They have a championship caliber in that portion. And see, what a lot of you guys don't know is that as teams continue to develop and teams continue to gain confidence, they get better. they start to gel, they start to believe, they start to have that sense of, man, we can actually do this. Just think about the Auburn team from 2010. There's nobody in the country that could place money, that could place their house, that could place their car on Auburn being the national championship. The national champions in 2010. It was really sketchy at the beginning. Balls bouncing the right way, things of that nature. Auburn continues to fight, continues to win games. Because if that was the case, if we're going to judge it based off that, although Auburn did go undefeated, if we're going to judge it based off that, the 2010 Auburn team probably should not have been a national championship contender if you look at the full body of work. 3-point wins against Mississippi State. 3-point wins against Kentucky. Finally starting to get it together with the game against LSU, a really talented LSU team. Beating Arkansas. Now, I thought Arkansas would actually I thought that was going to be the game that Auburn falters, because Arkansas brought a very good football team in the Jordan-Hare Stadium. And a lot of things went Auburn's way that game. I feel like in 2010, after the Arkansas game, that's when the team started to gel and figure out what they can do defensively, figure out what they can do offensively to lead themselves to the BCS National Championship game. And then you talk about the comeback in Alabama, the last win that Auburn actually had in Tuscaloosa, where Alabama was doing everything right. It was trending toward a possibility of Auburn, the number one team in the country, Cam Newton, the best quarterback in the country, could not get anything going. Probably should, if it weren't for that fumble out of the end zone where clearly it looked like Mark Ingram was going to walk in. If it wasn't for that play, you're talking about Auburn getting beat very badly in their first loss of that season. And let's look at Texas A&M. Texas A&M enters the conference in 2012. And for the most part, for the first few years of their existence in the conference, getting out physical, because their brand of football in the Big 12 was a little bit different. You outscore everybody. You don't have to play particularly well on defense, and that works. But you come into the SEC where they're being out physical. The first couple of years they did pretty good because they did have Johnny Manziel, which brought a different element to the SEC. But as they started to settle in, they started to realize, hey, you got to be good on both sides of the line of scrimmage. You got to have a good offensive line, and you got to have a good defensive line to compete. The game against Auburn was the game that really let me know, even though the ball bounced their way in that game, I think Auburn had an opportunity to win that game, especially with the dropped interception by Zakoby McClain. But even still, Texas A&M kind of beat Auburn up on both sides of the line of scrimmage, which lets me know that this is a team that, with where they're trending, and especially with Isaiah Spiller and all of the skill players that they had, Kellen Mond having a good game could actually sneak up on some teams. And it was just really unfortunate to see the College Football Playoff Committee with a straight face, put a team in Ohio State that struggled against Northwestern with only 6 wins into the College Football Playoff. Now that I can kind of I can't deal with it, but the biggest thing I can't deal with is the fact that Notre Dame got outclassed. I mean, it wasn't close. Why would you put a team in the College Football Playoff that gets outclassed this late in the season? Supposedly a number 4 team. Now, if they would have lost that game to Clemson by, say, 7 or maybe even 10, I could see it. But to get completely blown out and for Texas A&M to actually win over Tennessee 30, by multiple scores. See, the problem I have too is Texas A&M's resume was more than enough. They competed against Florida and Alabama, who both appeared in the SEC championship game in a dogfight. I think Florida did an excellent job. Alabama did an excellent job. Great SEC football. But Texas A&M actually beat Florida. early in the season. That's a resume building win. And I just don't understand how, with a straight face, the College Football Playoff Committee can place Notre Dame in the College Football Playoff. No more than I could understand in years past how you put Oklahoma in the playoff. I think you got to look at the past history clause too, because Oklahoma has really not shown up in the College Football Playoff. I think Texas A&M is a team that would have shown up and that wouldn't have gotten blown out. They might have lost. Yeah, I think they would have lost to Clemson. Definitely know that they would have lost to Alabama, but it wouldn't have been an outclass type situation because these guys are playing with a high level of confidence. It's just really unfortunate that politics and favoritism really cheated what I think was a very solid SEC team in Texas A&M out of the College Football Playoff. Let me know what you think in the comment section. I'm a little disappointed in the College Football Playoff. I think it's a very flawed system. And as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger War Eagle, even though we're talking about SEC football. But I had a really fundamental problem with this. Take care and subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments. See you next time.